Hare Krishna. Thank you for coming today morning. And some of you may have seen this book. I have spoken about it in some of the earlier sessions. This is a prayerful approach to the Bhagavad Gita. So you can go to page to the sixth chapter, page 232. So this is page 232. This is 6.25. This whole series of verses is very beautiful meditation or revelation by Krishna of the state of spiritual absorption. So I will just read the translations of some of the previous verses before we move forward. So from 6.19 onwards, you can go a little bit behind to 222. So in this book, what I have done is I try to approach the Gita as a source of prayer. So on each page, you will see there's a picture of a deity of Krishna. Then there is one sentence prayer. And then there is a poetic translation of a Gita verse. And then there is a reflection based on that. So this is a section in the Gita which comes very close to the highest states of meditation. Although, of course, the Gita is not talking about devotional ecstasy so much, it is focusing more on the yogic state of perfection. But many of the principles as well as the practices to get there are very similar. So let's look at this one by one. So help me protect, this is 222. Help me protect and power my desire for you. Let's recite the verse. Then Yatha Deepo Nivatastho Ningate Sopama Smrita Yogino Yata Chittasya Yunjan Yogam Atmanaha. As a lamp in a windless place burns bright, unflickering, steady in its light, so is the yogi whose mind is still, absorbed in yoga, focused in will. So Krishna is talking about that state where yatra uparamate chittam, yatha deepo nivatasto. So the lamp becomes steady. And that's where the mind can start focusing on a higher reality. And the same series goes on. This is actually a very beautiful reflection on the Shikshashtakam first verses, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. So, when will my mind become a mirror that shows the self? Yatro paramate chittam niruddham yoga sevaya yatra chaivatmanatmanam Pashyan Atmani Tushyati. When the mind is stilled through yogic grace, withdrawn from all in a peaceful inner space, the self beholds itself with no impure trace and finds deep divine joy in its own place. So now this is the 620 to 23 is actually the state of the description of samadhi. Or the first thing he says is the mind stops getting attracted towards externals. The mind's material mental activity stops. Yatra uparamate chittam. Uparamate is to stop. And then the mind starts looking inwards. Once the mind realizes there's nothing really attractive or worthwhile in the outer world, that's when it starts going inwards. So this is grant me the courage to seek experiences beyond the sensual. Okay. So I had it in this book. So I hope all of you have a copy to read. How many of you do not have? Okay. Okay, sure. So Sukhamatyantikam yattad buddhi grayam atindriyam Vetti yatra na chaivayam stitaschalati tattvataha. This is the supreme bliss of transcendence, beyond the senses grasped by intelligence. In this divine experience, seers steadily rest, knowing it as the truth, purest and best. So, grasp the intelligence. This is what I'll be focusing on in today's talk. That why there is an important role for buddhi in getting to the stage of samadhi, of the stage of spiritual perfection, spiritual absorption. But here Krishna is telling that, okay, the mind has a tendency to go outwards, we turn it inwards. And then when it turns inwards, it experiences a higher reality. And once one experiences that higher reality, one does not sway from it. One does not depart from it. The next verse will describe why does one not depart from it. So let me seek the state beyond insufficiency and insecurity. See, everything external that we seek, it has these two problems. Even if it is good, we feel it is not sufficient. I want something better. And even when it is good, there is the fear that it may go away. So insufficiency and insecurity are the two problems with everything in the outer world that we may achieve. Yam labdva cha param labham manyate nadhikam tatah yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. Having relished this, there is no greater gain. In this deep conviction, they firmly remain. No distress, not even a catastrophic affliction, can shake them from this divine realization. So there's no greater gain. So that insufficiency is not there. There's some other greater gain I want. And then there's no insecurity. Even if whatever is external lost, what I have got is great enough that this doesn't matter. And then the very beautiful definition of yoga which Krishna gives. Disconnect me, O Lord, from my connection with distress. So Krishna says, Tam vidya dukkha sanyoga viyogam yoga sangitam. So there is a alliteration of the word yoga over here. It comes 3 times. Tam vidya, know it to be dukkha sanyoga, the connection with distress. Dukkha sanyoga viyoga. The connection that we have with distress, there's a disconnection of that. And so the disconnection of the connection with distress, that is yoga sangitam. So yoga is basically, it is the connection that brings about our disconnection from our connection with distress. so, so if there is no connection, doesn't matter with this particular meaning. The idea is that when we become attracted to Krishna, when there's a connection with Krishna, then quite often it is our attachment to the world and the things of the world that is the cause of our distress. So when that connection with distress, yehi samsparshajab hoga, Krishna says that these are the very pleasures that we seek, they cause us trouble. But when we become disconnected from our connection with distress, that is called as yoga. And that connection which leads to that is actually bhakti yoga. So here, know this to be yoga, the divine connection. From all sorrow, it grants full disconnection. It grants full disconnection. So this whole series goes on. Let's go back to the insufficiency and insecurity verse. This is page 226. Okay, 228, correct. So, do we have a second mic, or I think it's a small room. Who would like to read? Maybe 3 sentences you can read. That's okay. You can start. You would like to read? 228 page number, the first 228, yeah, insufficiency. Just start at the right side.
something wonderful, it soon starts feeling insufficient. And something else, something I do not have, starts appearing more attractive, making me crave for that. And this cycle goes on, leaving me dissatisfied even after achieving the best of successes. On the flip side, should I
Yes,
continue?
I'll describe this. See, this is, we'll talk about broadly four stages. We can talk about how there is the growth in our absorption in Krishna. Hmm? So the first stage is conviction. We need conviction of the buddhi that this is valuable, this is important. Now, buddhi grahya matindriyam. Then, after conviction, three things happen. Broadly, the next stage is we decide that we will pay attention. If if we have gone to a doctor and we feel nothing is wrong, and doctor says you have to take this medicine, you have to do this treatment, we'll not even pay attention because we're not really taking the problem seriously. So when there is conviction, okay, that this is serious, this medicine is important, then there'll be attention. Hmm. Now from attention, gradually, what will happen is attraction will come. Now I'll explain this process of how it works. From attention, attraction comes, and from attraction, absorption comes. So we will talk about now all these three are actually centered around the manas. So we need conviction of the intelligence by which we'll pay attention with our mind. And when we pay attention with our mind, and gradually the attractiveness of Krishna and his holy name will be revealed to us more and more. And then there'll be absorption. Hmm. So broadly, how does chanting work? Buddhi is important because that is what enables us to stay focused. So without that attention, the attraction and the absorption are, they're rare to come. They will come, and we'll talk about how that also happens. But this is how chanting works. This is the broad process. Buddhi grahya matindriyam. With the buddhi, Krishna will talk about the same buddhi principle later, three verses later, which I was planning to talk about, but I went back. Shanai Shanai Ruparame Buddhya Dhuti Gruhitaya, Krishna says. Gradually, step by step, with our intelligence that is sustained by conviction, we need to focus the mind. Buddhi grahayam atindriyam. So we gradually start focusing the mind. So let's look at how this happens. And I'll talk about broadly three principles. So this will be a very philosophical class on chanting, but I'll try to make it as simple as possible because these principles I've spoken them at different places. I've never spoken them at one time till now, but isolatedly spoken, many devotees have told me that it's very helpful for them. So personally, I have myself found this also very helpful. So first we'll simply look at how human psychology works. Because chanting is a spiritual process, but it's a spiritual process which works through the mind primarily. That's why understanding how the mind works is very helpful. So we'll talk about the attractiveness of Krishna. This is where we'll move beyond psychology towards bhakti, towards more spirituality. And the last I'll talk it is about how it's a relationship with Krishna. It is Krishna is not just like a magnet that we are attracted to him. The principle is used sometimes. The magnet nor the iron filing is is conscious. It's just a mechanical attraction. So Prahlad Maharaj uses that, and that's an important principle to consider. We'll consider that in the principle of attractiveness. But beyond that, it's a relationship. It's not mechanical. So what is the psychological principle here? That I talked about this journey from attention to absorption. Now, this we will apply this specifically. We'll apply this specifically for chanting. But the principle is, if I consider this to be my consciousness, then initially Krishna is one component in my consciousness. So I allow Krishna to enter into my consciousness. This is the stage of attention. So this is what, going back to the previous diagram, with conviction we will pay attention. So right now you're sitting over here. Now you may be paying attention to what I'm speaking, you may be paying attention to what is being drawn over here. You may, their attention, part of the attention may be towards, okay, who is sitting next to you. Part of attention maybe, the floor is not so comfortable, maybe it's too cold, it's too hot, maybe I'm feeling suffocated with so many people over here. There are many things in our consciousness. But while there are many things, if you have come for a class, what is going on in the class should at least be one of the things. If it is not even one of the things, then we are literally not in the class at all, isn't it? So, like that, sometimes when we are chanting, the holy name is not even one of the things in our consciousness, isn't it? There are many things, all the things I have to do throughout the day, and this takes so much time, and we think of so many things. So, attention means at least it's one of the things. Consciously, we make sure that Krishna is at least one component in our consciousness. And then, what does absorption mean? That actually, as we keep doing this, with time, it starts getting revealed that initially we are giving Krishna entrance in our consciousness. But as we keep focusing on Krishna, we start realizing that actually Krishna is a far bigger reality. And then it is not so much we give entrance as it is our consciousness that gains entrance in Krishna. That's where we feel sheltered in Krishna. We sometimes feel transported to another level of reality, where we feel as if, no, that I'm not in this particular place at all. We have many pastimes of Mahaprabhu where he would fall unconscious, and then the devotees would chant loudly and bring him back to consciousness, and he would say, I was in Vrindavan, I was in the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Why did you distract me? Why did you bring me back over here? So this is the state of absorption. Absorption is the state where our consciousness gets so absorbed, so immersed, so completely lost in a higher reality that we just forget everything else. In Hindi they say, ऐसा ध्यान करो कि कौन ध्यान कर रहा है, किसका ध्यान कर रहा है, कैसे ध्यान कर रहा है, इसका भी ध्यान न रहे. So often this is associated with merging, but it doesn't have to be merging. It's a consciousness becomes absorbed. That's the state of absorption. Sometimes we use the word somebody is engrossed in something. So when we are engrossed, then we forget everything else. So if some class is going on, it's very immersive. Another word commonly now in devotee circle we use the word absorption. In the outside world, the word immersion is becoming very common. It's an immersive experience. Or sometimes in your browser also is an immersive reading tab. The idea is that it becomes what we are reading becomes the full screen, and then there's nothing else to see. So that's immersion, means that we become completely absorbed. Like when something is immersed in water, then water is all around it and is gone inside. This is absorption or immersion. So essentially, the process of chanting, if there is no attention, then there's no chance for absorption. First, Krishna has to become at least one component in our consciousness. And as we keep focusing on him, he will slowly start becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, when I say Krishna will become bigger, Krishna is always the biggest reality. But he will become bigger for us. He will start becoming the bigger reality in our consciousness. So this is from attention to absorption. And during our daily sadhana, that can be chanting, that can be kirtan, that can be our puja, whatever, it can be a study of scripture, whatever it is, if even for a few moments we get to this level of absorption, that is when we feel sheltered throughout the day thereafter. Okay, because throughout the day we are facing so many challenges in life, and so many things seem to be threatening, so many things seem to be tempting. So it is when we have got that experience. Yes, there is a bigger reality, and I want to be absorbed in it, and I have been absorbed in it. I have got some experience of it. then it's relatively easier to not be shaken by the world's realities. So the world's reality shakes us in two ways. That is this thing, insufficiency and insecurity. Oh, this problem, it'll destroy you. This thing, if you don't have it, what is the use of your life? You have to get a bigger house, you have to get a better phone, you have to get a bigger job, you have to earn more money. There's so many things which make us feel insufficient in our life. So basically, the mind gets its distraction from these two main things: the feeling of insufficiency, what I have is not good enough; insecurity, or what I have is not, it does not make me safe, or what I have is not safe enough right now. So these are two drives. But when we understand Krishna is the bigger reality, then what happens is we can stay more steady. So another way to look at this is, if we consider what is spiritual advancement. Initially, for us, the world is very big, and Krishna is small. Mhm. When I had started bhakti, I started about 30 years ago. I started introducing it to all my friends and relatives. So one of my uncles said, "Oh, I believe in God. He's happy there. I am happy here." So we feel as if God is irrelevant to us. But as we grow spiritually, mm, I started using the word spiritual growth more than spiritual advancement, because I was told by multiple people that to the Western mind, advancement sounds very mundane: financial advancement, technological advancement, economic advancement. It seems to convey a very mercantile vision of spiritual growth. This is not so much there when Prabhupada used the word. So growth is more holistic. It seems more wholesome. So I use the word spiritual growth. When we grow spiritually, what happens is the world becomes small for us, and Krishna becomes big. So if to somebody new also, if you want to explain what is spiritual growth, that is, there is an invisible reality, the reality that our thoughts rest in, and there is the visible reality where the things around us are. So the invisible reality becomes bigger for us. So as we grow spiritually, we will stay in this state more and more. Hmm. But during the course of our life, at least for a few moments, if we can get to that state, then that will calm us. That the world is not that big. All that happens in the world, well, it will come, it will go. It doesn't matter so much. So this is at one level, I said this is a principle of psychology. And as a principle of psychology, actually, it can apply to any object. Somebody may start watching some TV show, and they start watching that TV show and they become completely immersed in that. Somebody starts, say, watching Harry Potter is quite old. I don't know what is there right now. Some superhero might be there, some fiction might be there, and they start watching that, and for them that becomes the most important thing with time. There are these comic cons where people dress like those characters, and they go and act as if that whole world is real for them. Not just real, it is more real than the real world for them. So what at a psychological level, whatever we give attention to, that slowly starts becoming bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. See, some Indian kid may not even have heard of baseball. Maybe there's some movie, I think $1 Million Ram or something like that. Movie was there. That's about baseball. It was there. But apart from that, India baseball, nobody knows about it. But if that person comes to America and starts studying in college over here, and maybe hangs out with people who are big baseball fans, now that person would have not paid any attention when a baseball match was going on. And now, 6 months later, when a baseball match is there, Sarva Dharman Parityaj. I have to go and watch it, and that person will cheer that match like mad. So what is small can become very big with time. So this principle of from attention to absorption, this is a psychological principle. Another way to understand this is our 2.62 to 63. Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha. So there, it doesn't lead to absorption, or rather the absorption leads to destruction. But absorption means what happens? Once we get to that buddhi nashat pranashati, what happens is that time, this is the most important thing and I have to get it, and I have to get it right now. Nothing else matters. That basically means that has become so big in the mind. So this is actually a psychological principle that whatever we expose ourselves to, that will become bigger for us. This is That's why when we chant repeatedly, what are we trying to do? We're trying to bring Krishna in the sphere of our attention. And the more we bring Krishna into the sphere of our attention, it will become bigger and bigger and bigger. Mhm. So, what is the acronym I'm going to discuss? PR. So, A then is attractiveness. So, we're discussing P was what? Psychology. So, it's a psychological principle that attention will lead to absorption. Now, some people may say, then what does it really matter? How is Krishna different? Mm, when I was in India, there was maybe 5 or 10 years ago, there was some movie about some character, I think Munna Bhai or something. So he starts seeing Gandhi, and then Gandhi starts guiding him, and he starts becoming a better person by that. So is it like Krishna consciousness is like that Munna Bhai's Gandhi consciousness? That okay. Now later on, they say at the end of the cycle, at the end of toward the movie, they say actually there's no. It was just your mind's imagination. They will say, okay, if the mind's imagination is leading you to become a better person, then what's wrong with that imagination? Okay, that's one way to look at it. But the point is that there is everything that we experience just a creation of the mind. Now, it could be, but it doesn't have to be. It's like somebody may love gulab jamuns, and when they see a gulab jamun there, they might salivate. Hmm? Now they might close their eyes and imagine a gulab jamun, and then also they might salivate, isn't it? So just because they're salivating because of imagination doesn't because of imagining a gulab jamun does not mean there's no gulab jamun in reality, isn't it? So from the biology, from the physical or physiological and psychological perspectives, whatever we experience will have physiological and psychological effects. But whether what we experience is real or not is a separate question. Hmm? Just because it has a particular physiological psychological effect does not inherently prove its reality or unreality. Hmm? So now Krishna as a philosophical principle is Krishna. We know Krishna has a beautiful threefold bending form, wearing a peacock feather and a flute. That's Krishna as a person. At the same time, Krishna is also a principle, and the principle is that he is all attractive, and he is all attractive. However, at present, we don't feel his attractiveness to some extent or to a large extent, and that is because, so if we consider Krishna is here, okay, so okay, this is Krishna, and the soul is here. We are here. So now Krishna is like a magnet, hmm? And the soul is like a iron filing. So when we come in the presence of Krishna, we will be attracted. However, if this is covered, say by some rust, hmm, then what will happen is that attraction will not be manifest. So this is what impurities. This rust is like the impurities. So while Krishna is all attractive, but when there are impurities, then the attractiveness of Krishna is not manifest. So what are we discussing over here right now? So why is it so difficult to pay attention to Krishna? Why is it so difficult to focus our attention on Krishna? Because right now the covering of the impurities is so much that what is a natural attraction, what is naturally attractive, does not feel that attractive. So now for this, I'll talk about. mm there are Gita talks about the various types of pleasure in chapter 18. So I'll talk about 39, 38, 37. This is pleasure in sattva, rajas, and tamas. In Srila Prabhupada translated as goodness, passion, and ignorance. The thing is that nowadays the word passion has got a very positive connotation. Find your passion in life. So it's like, so I once gave a talk. Find your passion, but don't be in passion. so that's why I prefer to use the Sanskrit word generally, as long as people understand sattva, rajas, tamas. So now Krishna talks about what is the nature of pleasure in each of these. He's in sattva, it is initially like poison. Hmm? Afterwards, it will become like nectar. So for us, because of the impurities that we have, the focusing on Krishna initially feels like poison. And that's why the mind just recoils and resists. I don't want to focus on this. Although there is nectar eventually, but the initial poison is what makes the mind recoil. Now, on the other hand, now Krishna talks about other things where there is nectar initially and poison eventually. There are so many things in today's world. This initial nectar is what neuroscience calls as a dopamine hit. There are so many things which give us a quick dose of stimulation. Just look at whatever the social media, look at this TikTok video, look at this reel, look at here, look there. So it's just some change, some stimulation. So it's like initial nectar, but afterwards somebody starts scrolling and they start with 1 minute, 2 minute, and 1 hour is gone, 2 hours are gone, 5 hours are gone. They feel, what did I do? I wasted so much time. So then it feels like nectar initially, but it eventually becomes like poison. Why did I waste so much time? So there is the scrolling. Nowadays there's a new word called doom scrolling. Doom scrolling. Doom scrolling means what? That people keep scrolling all the ways the world is about to be doomed. Oh, this is wrong over here, and that is wrong over there, and that is wrong over there, and that is wrong over there. So, and quite often, yeah, there are many things wrong in the world. But what is wrong with us is we are thinking about all that is wrong in the world. And then people become so pessimistic, so gloomy about everything. This is where that many things which seem like nectar initially, especially during our chanting, thinking about other things is relatively easy for us because that's what we have been doing. Hmm. So now not all of it is like nectar and poison initially and nectar initially and poison eventually. Some things are important to think about, but there's a time and place for everything. Hmm. So for us to think about our family, think about our job, think about our health, think about, say, either we like politics or sports or whatever that we like. Hmm. That is relatively easier. So that's why it feels like nectar, because it's so easy to do. It does not require much effort. The mind basically flows in that direction. Hmm. So now tamas, is Krishna says, basically it is poison from beginning to end. So what does this mean? That in this actually there is no pleasure except the pleasure that I am not doing anything involving any trouble, or that is making me to put any effort. Like some people, they never do any work. Whenever any work comes, they just come up with an excuse for not doing that work. And I think I'm so clever, I came up with an excuse. And then at the end of it, what is the value of what we have done? Yadagrecha anubandecha sukham mohanamatmana, Krishna says. From beginning to end, it is just tamas. Now, unfortunately, chanting can become a time for us like that. Although chanting is to take us to nectar, but what happens is, if we do not push through the poison to the nectar, if we do not try to focus on Krishna, then the time of chanting becomes the time when we just wander everywhere. And now it's one thing. So initially there is some dopamine hit. We think of something which we like, but after sometimes the mind just wanders aimlessly, and say half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hour, whatever we are chanting. At the end of it, rather than being spiritually rejuvenated, we just feel even mentally exhausted. Oh, I kept thinking so many things. So now that's why when we say inattentive chanting can be an offense. The offense is not just Krishna gets angry with us. No, Krishna is a very compassionate God, but it's just that we are fueling the worst conditionings of our mind. The tendency of the mind is to just choose the path of least resistance. And if our chanting becomes the excuse or the forum for the mind to just choose the path of least resistance, then that is not only not psychologically healthy, it can actually be psychologically damaging. Because then it's almost like we are practicing inattention for 2 hours every day, or we are practicing distraction, and then the mind will get more and more distracted during the rest of the day. This doesn't mean we should be scared. I once gave this talk, one devotee told me, Prabhu, I can't chant attentively, better I'll stop chanting only. No, that's not the solution. We put in effort. Of course, sometimes it's chanting is demanding, it requires effort, and we may not be able to concentrate with the same focus all the time. And sometimes we may need a little break also so that we can refocus. But the point is, if we are not making any effort, if it is being done just as a ritual, completely as a ritual, where no effort is being made to focus, then this will lead to training the mind in attention and distraction. And that can be very damaging. Now, beyond this is the pleasure of bhakti. Where is this Krishna? This is Shuddha Sattva. And what Krishna says is, or Mahaprabhu says is, Purnamruta Swadanam. That Pratipadam, that he says, that so what is the word? Cheto Darpana Marjanam Bhavamaha Davagni Nirvapanam Shreya Kairava Chandrika Vitaranam Vidyavadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipadam Purnamruta Swadam. So it is not Agre Visha and then Amruta, it is Purna Amruta. So when our mind is pure, when there is no more impurity, then there is no struggle to focus the mind on Krishna. And that's why it becomes full nectar. So we would like to come to that stage gradually. So the more we start getting purified by the practice of bhakti, the more this initial poison disappears. So what happens on this journey is, when you're going like this, over a period of time, the initial poison will start becoming smaller and smaller. So it was large over here, it becomes small, and then it almost disappears. So that's how, as the initial poison starts disappearing, then remembering Krishna becomes joyful. Chanting becomes constant. What Rupa Goswami says, that Tunde Tandavini Ratimutti. So I feel like it's such a shower of nectar. I want hundreds of mouths and thousands of ears to just relish in the holy name. That comes when we get to the Purnamrita stage. So now here we talk about how Krishna's attractiveness is revealed to us is through this process where we go. That's why chanting requires us to be at least a little bit in Sattva Guna, a peaceful environment, and our mind needs to also be a little peaceful. Sometimes, if our mind is very agitated and we try to chant, sometimes it is said that by chanting our mind will become peaceful, and it happens sometimes. But if the mind is too much in Rajoguna or Tamoguna, then maybe taking a few deep breaths, doing something else that calms us down, can help us so that we can focus on it. Sometimes take some book, and sometimes we feel I can't even focus on reading. Well, take some Krishna book or something, read it aloud. Just read one pastime aloud, maybe the favorite pastime that you like. What happens when you read aloud? That, just like chanting loudly, helps us to focus both our mind, our tongue, and our ears. Similarly, reading aloud may be slow reading, but reading aloud helps us to focus. So, getting to sattva helps us to get towards Shuddha Sattva faster. So it's like going back to the previous point. In sattva, we can pay attention. Otherwise, the rajas or tamas, the mind is so turbulent that Krishna is not even one component in our consciousness. So we want Krishna to be a component, and we want Krishna to become the bigger and bigger component. This is how we get to the stage of higher and higher absorption in Krishna. Now, another way to summarize this is, you could have a 4-quadrant diagram, that there is initial. Okay, let's put it this way. That is, it's nectar, or it's poison. Now it's strange. Nectar initially, and it's nectar. Sorry, let's put it. It's nectar initially, or it's poison initially. And there is On this side also there is nectar. It's poison initially, or it is, if you consider, it's poison initially. So, and or it is poison eventually. Sorry, here it's nectar. Here it's nectar eventually. So now there is a mystical property in this laptop. It seems to have mystical property to distract. Like the mind suddenly gives pop-ups somewhere. So, oh, yeah, demystified it. That's a good question, good point. No, will that make a difference? I'll see if there's a possible. Yeah. So now, if you go here, which let's look at the pleasures. This is his tamas. No. So what I'm saying here is, okay, poison initially, nectar eventually. So poison initially, nectar eventually. Okay. Okay, let's put it this way. Let's make it. Maybe you can write poison initially and poison eventually. So it's like, there is basically the initial experience of something. That is how the experience is when we start it, and how it is eventually. Hmm? So now for us, how we start it and how it is eventually. Okay, let's try if this works. So what I'm trying to say over here is that for us, if there is the material conditioning, there are some pleasures which from the start to the end, they're all just poison. So this is tamas in this context. Initially, it is, okay, I'll come back to this diagram a little later. I have become a little distracted by the whole thing. So it is, okay, wait a minute. Okay, let's put it, I have been doing too much exploration to try to simplify it, but I ended up complicating it. Let's put it this way. There's nectar and there is no nectar. Hmm? There is poison and there is no poison. Okay. Okay. So now what happens is, now if there is nectar and no poison, this is basically Shuddha Sattva. Hmm? This is the pleasure that we will get when we are fully purified. Hmm? If there is poison and there is no nectar, that means just poison, then this is tamas. Hmm? Now, if there is poison and nectar, then that is sattva. It depends on which way you look at it. This is initial, this is eventual. Hmm? And if there's no nectar, no poison, there's unconscious state. I think something went wrong over here. Hmm?
That is the invalid thing, but here you can say a direction. Poison to nectar is poison to nectar is sattva, and then nectar to poison is.
Okay. Yeah, so. Okay. No,
No nectar, no poison, I said is.
That doesn't make sense. It just becomes. I'll come back to this. I have a whole class on this. I forgot about it, how I picked this. But basically, let's go back over here. The point is that there is some experience where there is just poison from beginning to the end completely. And that's totally pointless. And there is nectar from beginning to end. So what we would like is that the stage where we have to get to nectar from beginning to end. But to get to that stage, we cannot just jump there automatically. We'll have to go through the stage where there will be poison initially, but nectar eventually. Okay. So Okay. So, no, no, okay, wait a minute. Wait, I got it. The way, so it's like let me see. See, this is the no, no I got it. I got it. Wait a minute. Just let me. Now, I know you're trying to be helpful, but mm, time will tell whether you are confusing me or I am confusing you. So, okay, this is our mental experience. Mental experience means how does our mind experience something? And this is the soul's experience or a spiritual experience. Hmm. So, now the mind's experience can be something is nectar or it can be something is poison. The soul's experience can be something is nectar or something is poison. Now, if we consider from this perspective, then what the mind considers to be nectar and the soul considers, sorry, my soul considers to be poison, that is, this is rajas. Hmm? So what is good? The mind feels this is enjoyable, but the soul, it's poison for the soul. The visha is like a visha eventually. Hmm? Now, sometimes we are doing something which we don't even enjoy. For the mind also, it's not like nectar. Like sometimes some people just start surfing something and they keep scrolling. It's like they're not even enjoying it, but it's almost like they're an automaton just going on and on and on. It's like you're bored doing it, but still you don't stop doing it. Isn't it? So this is tamas. Where for the mind also it's poison, and for the soul also it's poison. Now, for the mind, it is nectar. Sorry, the mind is poison, but the soul it is nectar. This is sattva. Hmm. And for the soul and both, it is nectar is shuddha sattva. So basically, no, it's constantly. It will be when the mind is purified from beginning to end. For the mind also it is nectar. For the soul also is nectar. Sattva, it is, yeah. For the mind, it's like while we are in sattva, it is like poison initially, but we are able to push through it. So the point I'm making is that we need to get to this last quadrant. If you consider 3 and 4, we want to get to this quadrant, and the fourth quadrant we want to get to. And generally, the way to get to this quadrant, there are no, very rarely is it possible to get like this. From whichever quadrant we are, mostly it is the proper pathway is from sattva to shuddha sattva. So from wherever we are, we try to get here, and then once we have got there, then from there we can move towards shuddha sattva. That's why you'll see sometimes that if we are chanting in a very rajasic environment, then it is that we just feel as if I'm wasting my time. It's very difficult to focus. If we have got taste for chanting, it's possible, but it's otherwise quite difficult to focus. We might be able to read a book, we might be able to hear some kirtan, sing some kirtan. That's possible. It's like you go on, we go on Harinam Sankirtan. We don't go on a like Nagar Sankirtan. We don't go on Nagar Japa, isn't it? It's difficult to go on the streets and chant Japa because that does require a bit of a sattvic environment. It's possible anywhere to become absorbed in the holy name, but it is relatively difficult. So this is that the attractiveness of Krishna will be gradually revealed to us. Hmm. I'll make one last point and then we'll stop. So here, the last was about R is a relationship. Bhakti is okay. It's about a relationship with Krishna, and having a relationship means that Krishna can manifest in many different ways in our life. So for us, sometimes it may happen that sometimes we feel I'm chanting so much, I'm chanting so many rounds, but still my mind is agitated. Still, this is this trouble. Still, there is this trouble. Why I'm still not feeling so connected with Krishna? So that's because sometimes we may be chanting, but are we using the chanting as a express way to Krishna, or are we using the chanting as a escape way from difficulties? Now, it is possible that sometimes our mind is agitated. We had a quarrel with someone. I just want to forget it and start chanting and taking shelter of Krishna. And that is good. But the point is, sometimes if we are in a serious relationship with someone, we have to work with that person regularly. Then we need to actually sit down and deal with the issue. And if we don't do that, if we have to do some kind of mediation with someone, somebody says, instead of spending 2 hours in meditation, I'll chant 16 rounds. Well, the two are not interchangeable. Like if I had got a fracture in my hand, I said, instead of going to a doctor, I'll chant extra rounds. And the fracture is not going to be cured by that. So the soul, mind, and body are three different domains of reality. And just as the body may need some appropriate treatment, I'm not saying we have to go to a therapist. But my point is that when there are emotional wounds, they need to be appropriately addressed. So that's why it is amanita manadena kirtaniya sadahari. Now, amanita manadena, it can be literally taken as, we have to respect all respect to others and expect no respect for ourselves. That's true. That's one level. But another level is that when we can do that, we are not craving for something from others. And we are in a place where we can offer things to others. That's a healthy state of a relationship. If we are constantly feeling that this person is taking so much from me and this person is not giving anything to me, then what happens is the relationship becomes very strained. And when the relationship is strained, then our chanting also becomes strained. That amanina manadena, that is basically indicative of a steady state in our relationships. Now, a steady state does not necessarily mean a happy state. It can mean, okay, sometimes we can't. There are two levels of, Prabhupada said, your love will be shown by how you cooperate. So sometimes we may decide to we cooperate, and sometimes we cooperate. Cooperate means I work here, you work there. So, like, when in the pandemic I was doing podcasts with various senior devotees. So one time I got a suggestion that if there are two senior devotees, very scholarly, so get both of them and we can have a discussion with a three-way discussion on a particular topic. So I asked one of them and he said, yeah, he's a very good friend of mine. And why is he such a good friend? Because we meet only once a year in Mayapur. Now each people are different, and some people can get along with some people can't get along. But that does not mean that there has to be bitterness between them. Sometimes there can be a respectful distance, but the issue needs to be resolved in the sense that, okay, this is the way you are working, this is the way I am working, and so let us all work together. Let us not together, but work separately, but without criticizing each other. So to some extent in our relation, if we use chanting as an escape way to avoid healing the wounds in our relationship, then that chanting will not work. Initially it may work, but we just want to forget the whole thing. But if that person is a part of our community, that person is going to be there all the time. We're going to interact with them. Then just as Krishna says, raga is a problem, dvesha is also a problem. So if you are too attached to someone, then that can fixate our mind on that person. If you are too averse to someone, as soon as we come to the temple, if we have had a bad relationship with someone, that person comes, immediately, we are looking at the deities, but we're thinking, we hear that person's voice, okay, what is this person doing over here? And that person starts laughing. Why is this person so happy? So, this use in one sense, maybe Krishna is telling us that we have to take the step forward, we have to be more tolerant or forgiving, or at least understanding and let go of that wound. So Krishna may come to be speaking to us through that particular relationship and what we need to do in that relationship. If you put that aside and start using chanting as a means to not deal with the issue, then what will happen? That issue will be there, that issue will escalate, and then eventually our chanting will not really connect us with Krishna. So this is called as spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing means what? Basically, we use God to stay away from God. What do you mean? Use God to stay away from God? It's like God is coming to us and speaking to us in a particular way. And okay, maybe you are very insecure, or you are hypersensitive, or you have been disrespectful, whatever it is. The Krishna wants us to correct ourselves at an emotional level, at a psychological level, relational level, but we neglect that Krishna. We just focus on chanting more and more and more. So we are using Krishna to stay away from Krishna. So chanting is very important, but we can't reduce our relationship with Krishna to chanting. Krishna works through many different ways. Sometimes what happens is we may chant a lot, but then we become very judgmental and dismissive of anybody who doesn't chant as much as we do. And no, Krishna may come to us through chanting. Krishna may come to somebody through the Bhagavatam. And they may recite a lot of Bhagavatam verses. They may memorize a lot of Bhagavatam verses. They relish Bhagavatam. For somebody else, Krishna may come in the form of the deities. And they may not chant any extra rounds, but they are ready to extend themselves for any amount of service to the deities. So my point is that if chanting is a very important process in our bhakti, but we cannot reduce the relationship to chanting. Prabhupada started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It is not the International Society for chanting. Chanting is a key way to be Krishna conscious, but it's Krishna conscious. So when we have this understanding of a relationship, if we don't have this understanding of a relationship with Krishna, everything that comes in the way of our chanting, we just treat it as a distraction, as a distraction, as an irritation to get rid of. But no, some things may not be just an irritation to get rid of. Some things may be issues to address so that our relationship with Krishna becomes more holistic. So if some issue is occupying our mind too much, now, so this is where I'll conclude with this point that that sometimes the mind needs to be controlled if it is getting distracted. Hmm? And that is definitely required. Now, but sometimes the mind may just need to be comforted rather than controlled. Hmm? Say somebody has hurt us terribly, and maybe they spoke very hurtful word to us, maybe they betrayed us in some way, and we are feeling very hurt by that. At that time, we try to chant, and the mind just keeps wandering here and there. At that time, come on, focus. Well, the mind is wandering. It is because the mind is hurt over there. That's why one limb of bhakti is guhyam akhyati pruchyati. So if we feel very hurt by somebody, we need to be able to talk with someone else. Maybe that person is not going to stop hurting us. That is just the way they are. But we need someone to talk with, so that we can unburden our heart. We can get some healing just by the venting, by the unburdening of ourselves. So there are times when the distraction should not be treated as just a wild mind that needs to be controlled. So when the mind is wild, it needs to be controlled. Hmm? But sometimes the mind is not wild, it is wounded. And the wounded mind does not need to be controlled. It needs to be comforted. It needs to be healed. So that's why, and the wound to the mind can come in various ways, but one of the main ways it comes is through relationships. And that sometimes it may happen that we can heal that particular relationship, and sometimes we cannot heal that particular relationship. But if we cannot heal that relationship, then we need to have some strength and some contentment, some sort of affirmation and positivity through some other relationship. Some other, one devotee has hurt us, that's why we have a community of devotees. So that is, if one devotee hurts us, then there's some other devotee we talk with. Some devotees are just too unlike minded, and they may not want to hurt, but they just speak something that is hurtful. So what do we do at that time? At that time, we have to have some other devotees who understand us, who are like-minded as devotees. Okay, they understand what we are going through. So then when the mind is comforted that way, then the mind will refocus. And so, okay, this devotee has hurt me, and that's just a distraction, that's just an irritation. Well, my mind, let the mind control itself. No, it doesn't work like that. So sometimes it may happen that we may go away from one devotee because of that, or that devotee may go away from us. But then in that process, we come closer to some other devotee. And we start, like we say, a friend in need is a friend indeed. So we start understanding even in the devotee community, who are the friends we can count on. And yes, it is, rather than thinking this is just adibhautik klesh that I have to deal with. But through that adibhautik klesh, Krishna may be revealing to us who our close friends are. And maybe we are a bit too naive in trusting everyone, or maybe we are a bit too judgmental in trying to, we want to guide everyone, but some people don't want to be guided. And then we are with good intention, we guide them, but then they rebel against us. And we feel I did so much for you, and now you are going against me only. So maybe Krishna is telling us, we have to become a little more discreet in whom we guide, and how much we guide when that other person wants guidance. So there may be things we have to learn from our relationships also. That's why this, our relationship with Krishna is a holistic thing. And that means our relationship with others is also important. Like there's a difference between Kanishta Adhikari and Madhyam Adhikari. Kanishta Adhikari just goes and worships the deities but doesn't care for the devotees. Similarly, we can do bhakti at chanting at a Kanishta level where we just focus on chanting. I don't care for anything else. No, our chanting is meant to develop our relationship with Krishna, and that includes our relationship with others. Now, we don't want to spend endless time. It's not that, okay, because I want to do some counseling mediation, till this issue is resolved, I'll not chant anymore. No, that would be an extreme. It's like we want to avoid both things. That we want to avoid, say, we do say only chanting and we don't deal with issues at all. Hmm? There are other issues in our life. The other is we only deal with the issues and we don't do chant at all. Now, what we need to do is we actually need to chant, and we also need to deal with the issues. Ma Manusmara and Yudhyacha. So we have to remember Krishna, and we also have to do what is required to deal with the issues in our life. That way, when the relationship with Krishna becomes more holistic, we understand that Krishna speaks to me in many different ways. Then we will actually able to, that our chanting will become much more effective, because we will feel not just that I will constantly force myself when my mind is wounded. At that time, I try to force myself, it'll just not work. So when our relationships, they're not necessarily in a happy state, but a steady state. Steady means, okay, we have to work at a little distance from each other, and that's not the happiest state to be in. But okay, let's be at this level and let's continue our functioning. So that way we'll be able to focus on chanting more and more. So I'll repeat what I discussed today. Broadly, we discussed how chanting works, and essentially I talked about 4 points. It was that first was the role of buddhi. With the buddhi we need conviction. That it is with buddhi grahya matindriyam. With conviction, the first thing we give is attention. So then from attention comes attraction, and from attraction will come absorption. So for all of us, we want to get to this stage. So conviction is for the buddhi. With the intelligence needs to have conviction, and then these are the stages for the manas. The mind will have the first attention, then attraction, then absorption. Then I talked about what is par for the course of bhakti. P was what? Psychology. So psychological principle is that wherever we give attention, that will gain absorption. That will eventually we will become absorbed in it. So initially, this is my consciousness, and this is Krishna. So Krishna becomes, we give attention to Krishna, he becomes one component in our consciousness. And then gradually, as we move forward, what happens is that Krishna is revealed as a bigger reality, and then it is we who gain entrance in Krishna, the stage of absorption or immersion. And we discuss how spiritual growth means what? That initially the world is big for us and Krishna is small, but eventually what happens is that the world becomes small and Krishna becomes big for us. So this can happen with any object. Then I talked about A was attractiveness. It was attractiveness of Krishna. So I discussed over here how there are different kinds of pleasures. That there is pleasure which is poison from beginning to end. That is tamas. Then there is pleasure which is nectar in the beginning and poison in the end. This is rajas. And there is pleasure which is poison in the beginning and nectar in the end. That is sattva. And then there is nectar throughout. So purna amrita swadanam. So that is Purna Amrit, complete nectar. So this is the journey where we'll go to. How Krishna attractiveness will be revealed for us is that initially we will experience that poison. So we talked about this in terms of a graph. What is the mind's experience at the level of the mind, at the level of the soul? Something can be nectar or poison. Hmm. So sometimes you'll find that. So chanting and remembering Krishna is always good for the soul, but it may not always feel good for the soul. So if it's poison for both the mind and the soul, that is tamas. Nectar for the mind, poison for the soul is rajas. Nectar for the soul, poison for the mind, at least initially, that is sattva. And then there is shuddha sattva, where it will be both. So we want to get to this stage. The general pathway is from sattva to others. From here to here is generally very difficult. From here to here also it's very difficult. So better that from wherever we are, we try to first get ourselves to sattva as much as we can, and then from there we move towards shuddha sattva. So the attractiveness of Krishna will surely be gradually revealed. And last was relationship. So we are not just wanting to chant. Chanting is important, but we also want to develop a relationship with Krishna. And that means that we want to treat our chanting not as a escape way. There's some trouble, some issue. It's not an escape way from issues. It is more of a expressway to Krishna. And that means we will have to work in different ways at times. So it's an escape way from issues. Issues could be especially relational issues. So if the mind sometimes it needs to be controlled and sometimes it needs to be comforted, especially the wild mind is being just wild, it needs to be controlled. But the mind is wounded, it needs to be comforted. And when it is to be comforted, what do we do at that time? To comfort the mind, we may need to deal with other issues. So if somebody has hurt us terribly, somebody has betrayed us, we want to avoid the extremes of only chanting and only dealing with issues. We need to focus on our chanting, do what is important for our sadhana, but along with that, the other issues, we don't see them as different from Krishna consciousness. That is also a way I can be conscious of Krishna. And that's how each one of us can actually make chanting work for us so that we can experience more and more of that immersion in Krishna during our chanting. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Great honor and such a brilliant lecture on how to transform our japa that we are really looking for. And it was such a great privilege to have Prabhuji's time in spite of his busy schedule. Let us all thank and express our gratitude Prabhuji by 3 times chanting Hari Bol. Hari Bol. Hari Bol.
Let us all pray to Krishna that we can get, my dear Lord, please help me to get more and more shelter of you through the holy name and through whatever manifestation of yours that you wish to reveal to me. Help me to know when to control my mind and when to comfort it so that it can come closer and closer to you. Help me, Krishna, to get some experience of the nectar that comes eventually so that I can push through the initial poison. And hopefully, sometime in the future, I'll come to the level where your remembrance becomes nectar from beginning to end constantly. Shri Krishna Bhagwan ki, Shri Harinam Prabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Sai Gaur Premanande.
Prabhuji, do you have time for 2 questions? Whatever you suggest.
Okay, one or two questions we can quickly take. Maybe depending on how much. We'll take for 10 minutes, whatever it goes. Sometimes one question can go for 1 hour. Yeah. Okay, so I'll just quickly mention about the books here. I told you about this book. This book, many devotees are told it's very helpful for them during chanting. Just not during chanting, before chanting. so just reading one prayer, looking at a picture of a deity of Krishna, and then just either reciting the verse or the prayer and just reflecting on it. it can calm the mind and comfort it also as is required. So there is a table of contents where typically this is based on the first six chapters of the Gita, 122 verses I've selected. So whatever typical our prayer needs might be, our emotional situation might be, whether we are feeling lonely and abandoned, whether we are feeling too much craving and material desires coming up, whether we are feeling tasteless in our bhakti. So what are the verses of the Gita apply that time, and what are the prayers that we can have? That's table of contents is there. So you could read any of these and focus on the holy name better. Just like we have japa talks some devotees give. So this is more like japa writings with pictures of Krishna that we can meditate on. And this is a book that is for. Okay, so both these books, we unfortunately or fortunately, we have run out of the books right now. So you may have to uh, give us the order, then we'll send them to you soon. This is Gita for the CEO. So HarperCollins asked me to write a book presenting the Gita for the corporate world. Nowadays, this whole trend is there that people want to look in the traditional world. Stoicism is becoming very popular. That's from Europe. Then Ikigai is going popular from Japan. So people want to know what is there in the Bhagavad Gita that can help in corporate life. So I presented the Gita's wisdom using diagrams and illustrations, like I was drawing. Basically, 10 principles that can be applied in our daily life, especially in our professional life for success over there. Arjuna was not just a great devotee, he was also a great leader, a great archer, and a great prince and a leader. So similarly, we can follow in his footsteps. And this book is also, it's not just for the CEOs, it's for everybody who has a leadership role formally or informally, or everybody who wants to even be a leader of themselves. But especially it is in the corporate language addressing corporate concerns. So you can also give this to your friends or colleagues who may want to, who may not be yet ready to read the Gita, but they might read a book like this and then they may go more interested in the Gita also. Thank you. Yes, Prabhu. Okay, yeah.
Prabhuji, one of the things that I get disturbed during chanting is what I think outside chanting, which is uh, when I see the methods employed in preaching or reaching out to people, and I mean, we as organization, we have wide varieties, and we see some are working well versus others that are more traditional, antique. Um, my mind is disturbed sometimes looking at what other people are doing. How can I pacify my mind and focus on what I can do? And
Yeah. See, once you become a devotee, see, we all have a certain quota of klesha that we have to get. Is it the adhyatmic klesh, adibhautik klesh, adidaivik klesh? So once we become devotees, most of our adibhautik klesh comes from devotees. So it's not that the devotees deliberately want to provoke others, but that is there. So you just need to, at one level, just accept that. But another point is that, okay, what happened? That this Prabhupada started the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. It is not the International Society of Krishna Consciousness. That it is not that Krishna consciousness is automatically present here. It is for Krishna consciousness. It is actually something we aspire for. It is something that we provide facilities for. But it is that maybe some people might be preaching, but they might be bringing their swabhava. Actually, they will bring it, but they might bring their swabhava too much. And then some people have a much more confrontational nature, and then they just focus on dismissing everything, and then they may cause more damage. Some people may have a conciliatory nature, and then even if there are some issues where there should be confrontation, they will just try to find some middle ground, and sometimes there's no middle ground, isn't it? If somebody says that, we are not the soul, we are the body, it's okay. No, that is a core philosophical principle, isn't it? So the point is, sometimes some people may go towards to conciliatory approach too much, and that leads to accommodation to the world in ways that is not healthy. And some people may go towards the confrontational approach too much, where it is that we are creating unnecessary enemies. So unfortunately, both are there, and we can. And sometimes it might just be that Devotees are inexperienced and they learn from experience. Sometimes people just become convinced that this is the way it's worked for me and this is the way it will work for everyone. So this is, I think, in every religious organization, there's this problem of fanaticism. Now, fanaticism doesn't mean somebody takes guns and swords and kills other people. Can kill people with words also, isn't it? So fanaticism essentially arises from the idea. It arises from a very limited idea of Krishna. Limited idea of Krishna means what? Let's say for all of us, if I am here, okay, I should have done it the other way. Let's put it the other way. See, we are all trying to approach Krishna. So Krishna is like the supreme shelter. And then for all of us, while we are trying to move towards Krishna, we experience the shelter of Krishna in some way. This is like umbrella for us. So this is our umbrella. Now, if we get this umbrella, from this we can move, we are sheltered and move closer and closer toward Krishna. So for somebody, it might be when they do confrontational preaching, they feel they are being faithful to the tradition. And that's how they are taking shelter of Krishna. But the problem is that the same Krishna can offer different umbrellas to different people. Now, of course, some umbrella may not take us to Krishna at all. Isn't it? That's also possible. So, within the broad framework of Krishna consciousness, there are many things which are possible. Different devotees may focus on different things. So, the problem with fanaticism is that the way what works for me is the only thing that can work for anyone. So, if confrontational preaching is what works for me, see, in the outside world also, there are people who like that confrontational approach also. There are some politicians who become popular just because they are confrontational and controversial, isn't it? So there are people who like that approach also. In religious circles, secular circles, everywhere it is there. But is that the only demographic we want to attract to Krishna? No. So the problem becomes that we may have a more conciliatory approach where we don't want to make enemies. That's one way. And somebody may have a confrontational approach. So what do? It's just that we accept that this is something which is a part of the material world. If we feel very strongly about something, then we can try to communicate with authorities, communicate with those devotees, and try to help them get an alternative perspective or a broader perspective. Sometimes they accept it, sometimes they do not. Generally, what works in the long run is what works. That means, if we can demonstrate through our example that this approach to outreach actually not only leads to results, it also leads to results in terms of it's like wonderful devotees coming up. Not just devotees who are chanting. Then we have devotees who start chanting, but while chanting, they create trouble for everyone else also. Because they're hypercritical of everything. That's not healthy. But I think what works best is what works. Success works. So focus on demonstrating a model, even a small model. We show how something can be done in a more graceful way, and then the ripple effect will spread. It has happened also. I would say that in many ways, the first generation, some devotees had a super confrontational approach. That's almost like the norm. And it's a Prabhupada could speak like that. But in India, when Prabhupada's disciples also spoke like that, it did not work. You see, Prabhupada spent 7 years in India after going back almost 70 to 77. Prabhupada made a lot of life members, but hardly any disciples. It is only from the 87, 88, 89 that our movement started growing in India. Now, there could be many reasons, but one major reason is that those leaders who had a confrontational approach, they had their own issues, and some of them they stopped preaching, some of them left Krishna consciousness, and the leaders who are successful now in India are the leaders who don't have such a confrontational approach. Yes, even confrontational approach also has some success, but these leaders became prominent in the mid 80s, and now a movement has spread hugely. So I think sometimes things take time also to heal. So at least the super confrontational approach that was there in the late 1970s or the early 1980s, that is not there so much now. So things are, I would say, definitely improving, although there are some pockets where they are not. But everybody has to learn through experience. In Christianity, there is saying, "Oh God, please save me from the new convert." So the new convert is the person who has just come new. I think, I have the answer to all the problems of the world. And then they just impose their thing on everyone else. And they alienate a lot of people that way. So sometimes, some people remain new converts throughout their life. That's not a healthy thing, unfortunately. Okay. Yeah, last question. Yeah. What is the right way to seek comfort? I think it is what works for us. What I mean by that is each one of us has a distinct mind. And depending on our particular nature, some people are more introvert, some people are more extrovert. So those who are extrovert, when they're hurt by someone, they also need somebody else to talk with. And then when they're feeling very hurt, being surrounded by people is what helps them. Okay, that you talk with many people is just go for some festival, and then we're meeting with so many people, talking with so many people. And with some of them we may have deeper discussions, some of them we have more lighter discussions, but whatever it is, for them the comforting of the mind happens when one person may have hurt me, one person may have rejected me, one person may have betrayed me, but there are many other people who care for me, with whom I can connect with. For somebody who's more of an introvert, they may just want to retreat. I want to be alone. I want to process things. So some people say, I just want to go to some natural retreat center. I'll go close to nature. I'll go for a walk. I'll go for some place. I'll just be calm, away from people. Now, I wouldn't say that that is one devotee told me that he was very hurt by some devotee, and he was in a particular temple, and the management hurt him a lot. He said, I'm going from here. I'm going to that particular place. So when he was going, the temple leader told him, your the previous Mayavadi inside you is simply coming out and taking over you. That is Mayavadi, stay alone. He was from a Mayavad background before. So he was telling, I am actually feeling much calmer in this natural scenic place than I was feeling in the temple. So is it that the Mayavad is coming inside? I said, going to nature and getting peace in nature, that is not the monopoly of the Mayavadis. Isn't it? In the Bhakti tradition, the Virat Rupa, he is the form of Krishna. And so I think each one of us has to find out how we can be comforted. So whatever works for our mind, we need to do that. It would be sometimes, as I said, we may talk with some devotees. Sometimes we may talk with some old friends who may not be devotees. Now, we don't want to, if they are going to contaminate us with materialism, that's a different thing. But if not, sometimes, we get we just get to unburden with somebody who is close to us, but maybe not in the devotee community. Then if it's not going to wound our devotion, then that's also okay. So we have to find out what works for our mind. So it depends on our particular nature also. Now, what is our, basically, okay, this is the important point. We often downplay this point of vihara, yukta ahara viharasya. So vihara means recreation or entertainment. But what does recreation means? See, the mind is also like a machine. And because it's like a machine, we cannot keep working it all the time. So the mind, it has a working time and it has to have a downtime. Now the downtime of the mind should not take us down into materialism and sensuality. But downtime means, is there something relaxing that we can do where our mind is just comfortable? So for me, I live in words. So I'm a very word conscious person. So if my mind is agitated by something, I just start playing with words. Take this word and see what is the rhyming word with that and try to combine it and make some quote or give some thought. Just playing with words is what relaxes me. Now we all could say then, okay, watching TV relaxes me. Okay, that's one way. But watching TV, what are we watching in TV? If you're watching something which is very rajasic or tamasic, then the mind may be relaxed, but the mind will at that time be relaxed, but afterwards it will be agitated with all the images. And the mind will be relaxed, but it won't allow us to relax afterwards. We don't want that. So each of us, basically, the activity that we can do without having to force our mind to do it, that is where generally we feel comforted, we feel relaxed and rejuvenated. So we all need that activity. That's it. The downtime mind, we can't turn off the mind. That's not possible. And there are many areas where we need to focus our mind. It's work. But then, is there some area in our life where we can just let the mind relax? Ideally speaking, if it's something sattvic, that is best. So, if for some people, the relaxing of the mind can also happen in the bhakti activity only. The relaxing of the mind can happen in some people when they're there. Some people do stress eating, some people do stress cooking. Isn't it? It's just like you just keep cooking a lot of items and then they feel good about that. So that's certainly stress cooking is better than stress eating, isn't it? And each of us, we have to find, okay, what is it that helps me relax. So okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Now we have prasadam for everyone. Just take prasadam there and please come and get prasadam and you can sit anywhere else. Sharira Eve pele vishaya sagare tarmate chibayati labhamashulamati Krishna Bharatayamaya Kari Bhare Shayanamrita Bhao Shri Shri Radha Krishna Guna Gao Preme Dako Shri Chaitanya Nitai Preme Dako Shri Chaitanya Nitai Mahaprasade Govinde Nama Brahmani Vaishnave Swalpa Punya Vatan Rajan Vishwasona Vichayat Sade Sarva Dukhanam Hanirasyo Prasanna Chetasu He Asu Buddhi Paryavatishtate Tvayapavukta Shatkanda Vasalankar Charchita Ucheshta Bojino Dasa Tomayam Jai Mahi Srimad Bhagavad Mahaprasadam Ki Jai. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji ki Jai.
वही ना. So for Gita for CEO, we are only taking pre-orders.